The question is, how does this actually infiltrate our everyday lives? Or how do we display this? What does it look like for us to practically display the good life? Well, I want to talk about 3 areas of our life I think interact with this the most, and that is where we work or how we work, our families, and leisure. And I define leisure as what we do with our free time, stuff, and money. So again, I think the ways and areas and places we display the good life or live out the good life or even pursue the good life is through work, in our families, and then what we do with our leisure. What we do with our free time, our stuff, and our money. And what we, as I've wrestled with this content, if we use these things as avenues to pursue the good life, that is building your house on the sand. If you use work, if you use family, if you use leisure as a train to help transport you to this euphoric good life land that you're hoping for, you will get nowhere. But if from a different good life or from a different vision or from, life of the kingdom, you live these things out from a certain, proposition of I'm going to live out the good life in these areas, that is building your house on the rock. So rather than using these in search of the good life, if you live these things out, if you through work, through family, through leisure, you actually try to display the good life, that's where you actually begin to see your house built on the rock. So again, if we search for the good life in these things, we will not find what we're looking for. And so I want to start with leisure, and I'm going to unpack each of these. Again, there are articles, there are books, there are entire classes probably taught on all 3 of these things. This is an hour and a half long lecture on each of these, and so I'm doing my best to condense this content. Obviously, there are things I'm leaving out. I just want to throw that out there and leave that on the table. But this is, I think, where one culture is headed with these things and how we can live differently within them. So let's start. I actually want to go in reverse order. Let's start with leisure. A life motivated by self-gratification and pleasure forces us towards using leisure to pursue the good life. And that is a lot of people's way of going. It's all about what's the next concert I can go to, what's the next game I can attend, what's the next social setting I can find myself in, how can I continue to find a better experience, chase the better high, distract myself even more, what other show can I binge. It's all about using what's around us as the world is this giant playground. I get to play in it, and hopefully I have enough fun while I'm here to look back and say it was worth it. That is essentially using leisure to find the good life. And that is really hollow. And I don't know a lot of people who have actually lived that life. It's kind of cool when you're 20. It's a little less cool when you're 25, but still, justifiable. It's really uncool when you're 30, and it's super uncool when you're 40. It's just the older you get, that lifestyle, it gets less and less acceptable. And I think we can all think of a person in our minds where they're beginning to teeter on that line of, all right, this is no longer that cool. And I know those people. And what we do with our free time, our money, and our stuff, honestly, it's probably one of the number one places that we display what story we believe. And so what we do with our mornings, what we do with the free time when we first wake up, do we actually partake in the story that we believe through a resurrected Jesus, we have access to a God who we can actually converse with. And so, that story we're so compelled by that we use the first moments of our day to actually interact with him, and we believe that's one of the most important things we can do. Obviously, that's how every one of us live our lives. We work on church on a staff. That's, of course, number one thing that we all do. Or do we, what most of us and what myself has been this last season, do we just wake up and, it's just a lot easier to check my phone and I wonder what my fantasy football score is. I wonder what happened on Instagram, or it's just really easy to check out. What story is that displaying? What story is that showing? I'm not saying that our whole life is founded on the sand and that we're all crash and burning if that's the way we live, but even through those simple moments we display and we live out a certain story. Again, we live in what's called the attention economy. Right now people are making millions, if not billions of dollars based off of their ability to sway and persuade our attention via phones that are probably all in our pockets. It's actually the same parts of the brain that fire off during slot machines. Cal Newport writes, he writes this in Digital Minimalism, is the same thing that actually fires off when we interact with our phones. Like companies are attempting to do the same thing that slot machines do to people, that just keep bringing them back and back, slight dopamine hit after slight dopamine hit, with the same thing with our phones, all trying to make money and getting us to interact and see more advertisements, see more paid things. It's just leading us down this trail of they're trying to take our attention to hopefully make more money. Or even stuff and money that we live in a nation that's like the gospel of stuff and money. George W. Bush's encouragement to get back to regular life after 9/11 was go to malls and shop more. That was literally in his address to 9/11 was, hey, let's get back to regular life, let's go to malls and let's shop more. If you ask the average person in America, how life is going, oftentimes it can be tied to, if you watch the average news show in America, how things are going is often tied to where's the economy at. It all rests on the economy, what's going on. It's easy for us to attach the meaning of life to pursuing money and pursuing stuff, and that's actually a lot of what our country is built on, is get more. If you have more, you're happier. If you have more money, you're happier. Studies show that actually up until $70,000, more money actually does make you happier. It turns out it's better to live off $20,000 than $10,000, right? That makes sense. There's a certain point where it's like, yes, money actually does make you happier because you can eat. And some of our college students and those who are, some of our development programs are like, yes, you are correct. More money actually does make me happier. Beyond $70,000, there is no connection to money making you any happier. In fact, some of the most miserable, some of the lowest scores of mental health are with people who have over $1 million. There's a connection to the amount of stuff they get because it doesn't actually fulfill, doesn't actually bring what they want. It actually brings, more money does actually bring more problems, as P. Diddy once said. The more stuff we have actually does, everything that we partake in, everything that we own, everything that we end up purchasing, there's a greater cost than just what it financially costed. It costs our time, our energy, our mental capacity. And over time, if we just accumulate all this stuff, we can only give our time to so much. I say all this to show that, again, a life built using leisure to pursue the good life, this isn't a very hard one to convince you on, I don't think. It leads to a hollow, empty life that eventually will collapse in on itself. And so as the church, I think what I want to be careful of, what we shouldn't do is just become ultra monks who don't have phones. We all throw our phones in the river. All of us, we live off barely anything, and we have nothing. We're all living off extreme simplicity, and living these lives that are completely against anything that's media or TV or entertainment or doing anything fun. That's not the goal. The goal isn't to be some, again, bland vanilla monk that has nothing, no money, and again, has no connection to the outside world. That's not the goal. The goal is to actually see that leisure has a place in this life. All good things that we experience, I think, came from God ultimately. And what we need to do is just figure out the balance. And so I think a lot of this is just navigating, okay, what limits and boundaries do I need to create to prevent excess? In an age of excess, an age where everything is available kind of at our fingertips, what limits and boundaries do I need to place to make sure that my life isn't built on leisure? I think another thing is ask ourselves, hey, am I doing things that give me life, or am I doing things that cause me to escape and numb? It's two very different things. So right now, in this season of life, I don't watch a lot of TV. Kayla and I, we have 2 young girls. We're busy, both working full time. A couple times a week, we sit down, we watch the show Survivor. I don't know why. We've gone back into the early 2000s, and that's the show we like to watch. I don't know what happened, but that's where we are. And that actually does give me life. The 1 hour that we sit down and we watch an episode of Survivor, it actually is one of the best parts of my week with Kayla. We really enjoy it. Now, we don't sit down and just binge it all the time. We don't sit down and it's not on 24/7 in the background, but we have a moment where we get together, and it gives us this entertainment provided to us, this leisure gives us life. Now, there are other things I do on my free time. We won't name them. Don't necessarily give me life, but distract and numb. Things like fantasy football or podcasts or scrolling whatever app it is that day. These things can be fun, and I enjoy them, but without limits and without boundaries, just cause me to kind of go into this oblivion of distraction that honestly I'm totally happy living in, but doesn't create good things around me. And so I need to actually create boundaries in those areas. The last thing is, are you creating or are you just consuming? In his book, The Tech-Wise Family, Andy Crouch talks about the difference between tools and devices. And so tools are created to actually help us accomplish something, but there's a certain skill required to use the tool, like a shovel. A shovel helps us dig in the ground, but you need to have the actual physical capability to dig in the hole. But devices take out the skill, take out any need for any source of knowledge, and really all the effort, but does all the work for us. And we just need to be careful. Are we living in a world where we are just giving ourselves to devices, or we're just consuming, or just letting things do it for us? Or are we actually engaging in our creative abilities to use tools, but to actually do something with our hands, with ourselves, to actually create something that wasn't previous there? And this can look like a number of things. I don't think I'm like a natural creative. Probably won't surprise a lot of you. I'm not like just some artsy person. I can play the box drum, but that's because I have arms. I don't have a lot of music abilities, but I've learned that creativity for me is actually expressed in physical activity. Like working out, getting to coach, getting to use some of the skills that God's used in me, built in me to be creative with those things, to write, to get to create some content, to use my gifts to not just, again, consume and kind of numb out, but to actually create what's around me. And I don't know what that looks like for you, but every one of us has been given abilities to create something. And I think it's easy for us in our free time to just consume, but I think there's something life-giving to creating. So that's leisure. I went a little bit longer on that than I had hoped. So these next two are much more substantial: family and work.